here in the refrigerator of books. So we'll all probably be nice and toasty here in a little bit. Hi, I'm Charlotte Moore. I direct fantasy literature. I'm told that nobody reads books, but you guys just seem to belie that statement, which is awesome. So thank you for being here. We're going to talk about darkness and fantasy. I'm just going to introduce my panelists really quickly, and I'm going to let them talk about themselves for a while, which I hope everybody enjoys. This is Delilah Dawson. She's fantastic. This is Jim Butcher. He's okay. And that's Chelsea Quinn Yarbro. Don't fuck with her. So if you guys could just sort of quickly talk about your series and why I would have asked you to be here. Like, what is the darkness?
Bothering you, I think, is the answer.
Yes.
I'm Delilah S. Dawson. I write the Blood series, which was supposed to be romance, but then people started killing each other. And then I have a couple of YA books. I think his relationships end better than mine, apparently. Servants of the Storm and Hit are my YA books. Lots of people die in those as well. And then I have an upcoming Weird West under the name Lila Bowen. It's called Wake of Vultures. And big surprise, people die.
Hi, I'm Jim Butcher. I'm the author of the Dresden Files, the Codex Alera, and the upcoming steampunk series, The Cinder Spires. I think I'm probably here on account of I'm writing sort of a wizard private detective, which is sort of fantasy noir. It just kind of fits right together there like that. So I think that's why I'm here.
Nailed it.
Maybe.
I'm Chelsea Quinn Yarbro, and I write many books about Saint-Germain, and I'm starting another series, by the way, that you might be interested in, and if so, please come up and take one of these before you leave. It's called Chesterton Holt's Gentleman Haunt, and it's about a former spy, former because he's dead, haunting a young reporter, female reporter in Philadelphia in 1924. And I had avoided ghosts for a long time because they're non-corporeal, and what can you do with that? And I finally decided after 30 years of avoiding the subject, I might as well sit down and give it a try. And this was actually a lot of fun, and I'm working on the second book in this series. And I'm working on the 28th book in the Saint-Germain series.
Woo.
So before I start lobbing questions, I just want to kind of establish some terms so that we kind of know what we mean by like noir, by film noir, by fantasy noir. So film noir is sort of categorized or sort of known for an anti-hero, a cynical detective facing an uphill battle against a corrupt system. Maybe it's somebody who used to be idealistic and now has sort of become what he or she hated in the course of fighting an adversary. And visually it's known to be very black and white, very gritty, very highly stylized, and there are certain archetypes that we've all come to know: the private eye, the grifter, maybe the innocent man who somehow got thrown into a situation that's out of his control. And so in terms of the fantasy genre, the way I sort of like to think about it is it's any story that really sort of is in contrast to this like safe, Vaseline lens-covered pastoral landscape where maybe our protagonist is unreliable or endangered in some way and has also become sort of cynical in the course of fighting the powers of evil or whatever the threat may be. So my first question is sort of a two-parter. The first is what appeals to you as a writer about this genre? What gets you off writing about this? What do you like?
Wow. That's for like an after 11 panel. Let me open to page 47 in my latest work.
It's after 11 a.m.
No, I grew up in a bucolic little suburb where everybody was normal until you realized that like everybody was miserable all the time. There was so much darkness hiding under the normalcy that as a writer and a reader, I seem to tend towards the books where everything seems okay, and then you find out that there's this other world where different things are happening that aren't quite as pretty and pastoral and Vaseline covered. Even if when I tried, my agent was like, you should try writing contemporary, and then I wrote it, and she was like, this is really dark, and I was like, huh? So I think it's when you come to terms with your own darkness and embrace your beast within, eventually you're like, I can't write anything that isn't bloody, and that's okay. Yeah, there's no blood in the sex scenes, it's just in the murder scenes. He doesn't trust me.
It's not that I don't trust you. I've been told to listen to my instincts.
Your instincts lie.
What do I like about it? Oh God.
As a writer, I'm going to ask you in a minute what you like about it as a reader and a fan. But
As a writer, what I really love about it is I love being able to subvert expectations. I love being able to invert things where I can, to where your fairy godmother might be really good torture and kill you, in the name of taking care of you.
Right.
Or where you've got this wizard character, and what I kind of always enjoyed about Harry was that there was always this kind of sense of everything's got to be hidden. You've got to keep it hidden from the mortal world. And in the Dresden Files, it was all like, no, the mortals are just they're a little bit too dense to really get what's going on. Give them half a chance, and they won't even really acknowledge it's happening. So I've always enjoyed that. Harry just advertising in the phone book, and I enjoyed putting Harry up against absolutely everyone. That part of the noir genre really appealed to me. Harry Dresden is the Charlie Brown of urban fans. He just has to keep trying to kick that football, but it doesn't matter where he turns. I got a rock. That's kind of where he winds up, and the noir setting is just a great setting for a protagonist, because it doesn't matter what happens, he can get kicked by it. Even the best things that happen to him can be the most horrible things that happen to him. So I've enjoyed that tremendously.
Schadenfreude, basically.
Yeah, I can torture from every angle and every direction, and then the fans like it. So.
Well, mainly in doing Saint-Germain, the idea was to take a vampire and push the image as far to the positive as possible and still have a recognizable vampire. And then, to do what I really intended to do all along, tell stories about the lives of women as seen through the eyes of someone who could actually understand. And by using a long-lived character as a lens, I got a chance to observe and tell about whole bunches of times and whole bunches of incidents I'd just as soon avoid if I had a choice in real life, in such a way that you don't have to stop and lecture anybody, and you don't have to have people in the story and in the time act inconsistently with their time and their story, because there is the ultimate outsider watching and telling the story that way.
Which actually, I'm going to skip the next question that I was going to ask, because you led me to a better one, which was, why is fantasy a good vehicle for this? Like, why not just write detective fiction? What about the supernatural sort of helps your story?
For me, the reason not to write detective fiction is there might be too much money in that. I'd be concerned. I could just never. There was always. I think the problem is that I got started on Star Wars, and the first, it was one of the very first memories I have of going to the movies was my sisters took me to see Star Wars in when it came out in '77, and I was 6 years old, and that was a cruel thing to do, because I started off learning that your science fiction should come with a healthy dose of magic in it. Because that's what we learned from Star Wars. We really, at the end of the day, and that empires are bad. So you know, as I went on, you know, I mean, I would read like other Star Wars books, and some of them they didn't even have any Jedi at all, and that wasn't nearly as much fun. Even though it had Han Solo, it didn't have any Jedi, and that wasn't like where was the magic? And you know, I would go and read other books, and there would if they didn't have magic in them, they would be lacking in some way. There would be the sense of expectation and wonder and the hoping you would turn a corner or turn a page and find a miracle waiting for you was something that I found myself missing every time I read something that didn't have magic in it. And I think as I've grown up and become an adult, I've gotten no better about it whatsoever at all. I can kind of, as I've grown as a writer, I can appreciate somebody's skill if I'm reading something and there's not a supernatural element, but they're really good at doing it. You know, I'm reading a Robert Parker novel and just being stunned at how well he can do dialogue and how he can convey emotions subliminally, you know, within his story. And that's great and all, but Spencer would be cooler if he was also a wizard. and that was sort of, in a lot of ways, that was what drove me, because that's what I loved. When Buffy the Vampire Slayer came on TV, I was like, this is what I have been missing all the time. This is what I have wanted. It has kung fu, and it has monsters, and it has magic, and it is amazing. And so from then on, there was no hope at all.
Any other thoughts about that?
You go first.
Basically the same thing. You know,
Ditto?
everything Jim Butcher said, I was thinking it. No, I grew up, I was supposed to be super duper normal and an athlete, and I failed at that. And I was always looking for, like, I'd open the cabinet and be like, well, maybe this time it will be the door to Narnia, because that's where I really belong. And I felt like I didn't belong in the world of normalcy, and so it was lovely. Still don't. But just the idea of there could be a stranger place where I would feel more accepted, where there would be more magic, where I would want to be. Like, I never understood the Disney princess thing when I was growing up. I was like, I know these prince boys, we're all just like the same dude in a cape. And then you see Spike, and you're like, okay, now this I'm on. Like, why is he not in a Disney movie? Like, that's what appealed to me. So it's that same idea where when I'm writing a book, I'm like, okay, you know, Waco Vultures, you're in this kind of amalgam of Texas, and it's like Lonesome Dove, and then, you know, but what if instead of Blue Dove, like, it was legit werewolves? That's so much more fun, and like, these dudes are chasing me across the desert, and they're like, freaking werewolves, like, reload your gun with the silver, man. It adds a layer of fun, and also, you know, I don't feel as bad killing werewolves as I do people.
So essentially magic is more compelling when it's a little dangerous.
Yes, for violence and sex.
When I was a little kid, my Finnish grandfather would occasionally tell me Finnish folk stories, and some of those are not only very, very dark, because of course parts of Finland are very, very dark for much of the year, but the influences were so disparate to most of what you find in, say, European folk tales that, you know, I began to like look into different kinds of stories that that account for things like the weather and other things like that. But, you know, to this day, I still think the scariest thing about the weather is Lohi, who is the goddess of the north in Finnish legendary, and she keeps all the winds in bags, and when she's in a bad mood, she turns them loose. And she's often in a bad mood. And when she's really ticked off, which she gets about every September, she would turn her cloak loose to go capture the sun, and it couldn't be turned loose again till another 6 months had passed. And that kind of really, really environmental oppression struck me as a really nice plot device, and I've been using it ever since.
Just thinking about the idea of gallows humor, laughing in the face of certain death, essentially, tends to demonstrate sort of resilience in the face of the inevitable. Is that something that plays a role in your work? Do you think that humor is important in a bad situation, or you know, do you prefer to just write like the dark, never-ending, relentless story where everything is terrible all the time?
Jim and I were on a panel on exactly this last night, so we
Oh.
can steal everyone's answers, and you guys will have no idea.
Wait, you remember that panel?
I was
Everybody had been.
I was the sober one. Really,
I assumed that was vodka. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, every panel has to have like a designated driver panel.
Designated panelist.
Very bad navigation sense, so you're all in trouble. No, I think the smartest thing I said last night while mostly sober was that humor is the pressure valve for horror, and that, when horrible things happen to me, I'm the one who's cracking jokes. I broke my back last year, and I didn't lie on the ground and text my husband and pray to God. I got on Twitter and said, hey guys, happy birthday to me. I got a broken spine. Yay! That was so much better than being like, well, I can't move and I almost died. But that was just a better way to deal with it. So even in these books, even if it's not funny to the protagonist or the people in the story, oftentimes it's funny to the reader because it lets us embrace the horror.
I'm getting a what she
Mic
said.
drop.
Okay, all right. Did I see a hand up a second ago? I just want to answer your questions as they arise. No? Okay. Oh, no, okay. So here's like sort of a random question, or it seems random. Just because I want to get insight into you guys. What keeps you up at night? What frightens you?
Aside from broken back.
Writerly anxiety.
Writerly anxiety.
Yeah. Deadlines. No, I'm not going to answer my fiance. No, Sam.
Okay.
Bills to pay.
Yes.
Bills to pay.
Yeah,
There's-
should be up tonight.
And what scared you when you were kids?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I used to have a recurring nightmare about a Bigfoot that lived in the lilac bush behind my house. And I had a recurring nightmare that I would be running around the house playing tag with friends, and he would jump out and drag me into the lilac bush, and I'd never be seen again.
It's a very sort of Gaiman thing to actually. It was a very like a Neil Gaiman story
I
there.
don't know how I feel about that.
Well, I don't know.
But
You
you
could
bet-
write it too. I mean, I don't know. Just something I thought.
And a Bigfoot grabbed him at the end.
Yeah.
Your Bigfoot character's so nice, though.
Mine is really similar to that. I had a recurring dream that Abraham Lincoln chased me around the bases of a baseball. You can't escape. You have to keep running the bases.
Delilah, who hasn't had that dream?
Lincoln?
Also Godzilla. And not just Godzilla, like I would be caught in the turmoil, but Godzilla specifically coming after me. He was angry at me over some misunderstanding. I don't know what kind of misunderstanding you have with a giant radioactive lizard when you're a third grader, but
But you messed up.
there were a lot more dreams about big things when you're physically littler than everybody, I think. I think that might be part of it.
And Pennywise scared me as well, especially before you knew what he actually was.
Yes, by the time you find out what it actually is, it ceases to be scary.
Naming the monster makes it less scary.
Yeah, well, and as someone who is, when I was a little kid, I was terrified of clowns.
Rightly so.
I still don't think they're very funny. But when I was very little, I thought when you talk about monsters, big lizards didn't scare me. And, even Frankenstein didn't scare me. Dracula I kind of liked. But boy, clowns,
Clowns tortured Dumbo and his mother.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That was my first exposure to clowns, was Dumbo. Good Lord.
Our parents showed that to us. That and Bambi. Have fun at school.
Maybe I'll still be alive when you get back.
Yeah.
Are your stories written as a response to anything in particular? Like when you've been reading speculative fiction, either as an adolescent or whatever, did you feel like something was missing and you needed to respond to that? Is there a particular moral bent to your stories, something that you want your readers to come away with?
I learned not to do that. Because just when you think you've got it and said it really, really clearly, somebody's going to give you a response that's 180 degrees from what you intended, and be absolutely convinced that that's what you intended.
Yeah.
So, no, I tell the stories in terms of the ways that the characters want it to be told. That's my job. They sort of hire me.
You're just a contractor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like flipping tropes. I think it comes from that same thing of being told to be one thing when I was growing up. I'm like, no, I'm doing the other thing, whatever it is. But like Wake of Vultures, I was watching Lonesome Dove, and I was like, man, everybody in here is like a dude, except for the prostitute and the woman who like tends to her catatonic husband. It was like nobody. There's not a single woman like riding a horse, being brave and awesome in Texas. So she's half black, half Native American, and she's a girl who realizes that being a girl is a sentence to death. So she puts on pants and decides to be a man. And she gets to kill everything, but like you couldn't do that. So it was basically that don't tell me you can't do this with a Western, because I'll flip that too.
For me, I read lots of classic wizards, and you know we start with Merlin and we start with Gandalf, and the wizards they do this magical stuff, but it was always kind of you know it was kind of low key. Like you know Gandalf shone a light on some things once and did some special effects a few times, but mostly you know he got business done with a stick and a sword. You know, you go over to Merlin, he's basically doing support stuff. You don't really ever see him do, you know, wizard stuff. He's always kind of in the background manipulating things. You get to other wizards like that, and you really don't see him doing a lot. And I got to the point where I was like, all of my wizards can cast Fireball at 5th level. and I'm really missing seeing fireballs from wizards. So I wanted to have a more action hero, a little bit more militant wizard who was going to be up front and blow doors off the hinges and kick down kick the bad guys' teeth down their throats occasionally. So that was a lot of what drove me for Dresden. Was I wanted to have a little bit more of an action hero wizard. I'd grown up with too much Stallone and Schwarzenegger in their heyday, and I wanted a wizard who was doing that stuff.
Reminds me of Eddie Izzard, like executive wizard.
Executive
He
wizard.
has power.
Do you guys watch a lot of film noir or horror? What would have been some of your film influences and stuff like this? What do you watch and you're like, oh, that needs to be the story? Or is it more subtle than that? Lifetime.
No, my film influences include Big Trouble in Little China and
Yes.
The Thing and Escape from New York and you know ridiculous lots of movies like that. I would find a movie like Pumpkinhead tremendously inspirational. I love Pumpkinhead. Oh my god, that is the best cheap horror movie ever made. And they really managed to make that freaking puppet scary, you know, before the end of it, because they really give that character. He's like, oh my gosh, that is a really evil demon. I love it. And yet it still has trouble walking across the holy ground, you know, while it's going on. And this idea of bringing out this conflict of forces, it was something that I always loved. The Frighteners, I loved that movie. That was very inspirational. I loved the scenes in The Frighteners where there would be battle going on two different planes at the same time, where you would, in the same frame at the same time, you'd see this ghostly fight happening while there was a physical struggle happening in concurrence with it, and I loved that image. So yeah, some of the movies that I liked.
Okay.
I'm older than you guys, so what really got me was Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast.
Oh.
That is one of the, yes, it's a fairy tale, but boy, it's a scary fairy tale. And I'm also very, very fond of the film of Casting the Rooms. It's called Curse of the Demon with Dana Andrews. That's got still an image that sticks with me, decades later. As Dana Andrews is going away from the magician's house, he's going through the woods, and there's this sort of sparkly thing behind him, and you see him start to run, and you see behind him just footprints, long clawed footprints, about twice the size of his footprint, and coming far too quickly, smoking as it comes. You don't see what goes with it because, of course, your mind builds something far scarier than any special effects department can come up with. Those smoking footprints are still with me.
I had Twin Peaks, which was, it had like that noir aspect, but still had the fantastic of like, you have no idea what's gonna happen. Somebody can just show up holding a log and it'll mean something. But I remember I went through my first period of like insomnia anxiety when I was about 13 and I couldn't sleep, and the movies that were on TV at 1 in the morning in like 1990 were very strange movies, and it's like there were things like Night of the Lepus.
Oh my gosh, my dad showed me that when I was a kid. It was amazing.
My blood books, when did they come? Like the rabbits are all vampires and the squirrels are vampires, the horses are vampires. Because like that was so like crazy. You just see this giant rabbit coming at you. Like, this isn't done well at all.
Yeah, no, the movie's just like, and now a bunny.
But it's so compelling and iconic and cruel. You're like, this isn't good, but it's so good. And Labyrinth. So I guess the movies I first got obsessed with and watched over and over are movies I recognized at the time, like these are not quality movies, but there's something here that has stuck with me and become a part of my mental escapades to this day. And they were all kind of dark and weird.
We're about halfway through. Do we have any questions at this point? Yes.
This is a question for Jim. James Marsters has done the audiobooks for your books, and they're amazing. And you already mentioned about being a fan of Buffy. So did you reach out to him, or how did you find out that he was going to read your audiobooks?
Okay, first of all, let me just say, James Marsters was the guy for you. No wonder your romances wound up everyone killing each other.
my first romance, the character was based on Spike. Like he talks just like Spike.
Okay.
Transparent.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like I very clearly steal everything from somewhere else. But as far as that goes, at one point I got a call from a small publisher called Buzzy Multimedia, and Buzzy said, we would like to do an audiobook of Stormfront. And what I heard was, we would like to pay for your auto insurance for the next 6 months. And I was like, that will be fine. And, I thought that was cool and exciting. I mean, it was a small publisher, but something was happening, and that was neat. I only had, I think, 3 books out at the time. And then they called back a few weeks later, and they said, we just thought we'd let you know we are going to get Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer to read it for you. And this was like in season 3 of Buffy. This was Buffy was really racking up the attention, and then I was just like, yay! And that was the process.
Sounds really technical and involved. Any other questions? Yes, Jay.
You mentioned before that sometimes you get surprised by what people get out of your books. Have you ever looked at what they got out of it and said, I can say that?
The question is that the authors have said that sometimes people are surprised by what they get out of their books. Are you ever surprised by what people get out of it?
Yeah, but if that's what you get out of it, that's what's in it for you. It doesn't mean I put it there, but it means if that's what you found, that's what it is for you.
Has anybody ever like found, I guess it was more like, has anybody ever found something in your book that you're like, yeah, I can totally, I didn't mean to put that there, but that totally makes sense?
Go ahead.
My first book only came out in 2012, so still when people I read it, go like, oh my god, I love you, we're best friends. But I was a rape victim in high school, so all of my books, any kind of relationship like there is consent and safety, and I guess that's not always something people are looking for in romance. So I hear a lot of people come and say, like, as someone who has been a victim, that's important to them. So I'm glad that's becoming more of a topic in not only romance books with the big capital R, but anything that has a romance.
And I guess it's sort of related to the question I was trying to get at earlier and did badly. Why do you keep calling me random too many digits number? Go away.
You're calling about James Marsters' auto insurance.
That must be. What are some themes that you find yourselves coming back to over and over? What's really, I don't know, what grips you? You want
The Dresden Files are all about power, the uses of power, its abuse, and its responsible use. I read far too much Spider-Man when I was young.
Great power comes great
Spider-Man was all
responsibility.
about, with great power comes great responsibility. And poor Dresden read too much Spider-Man when he was young, and he takes that seriously. Only he walks around with, like, at least city-altering power on a daily basis. which he feels this need to use responsibly, and it's what drives him. That and the fear of not being able to look himself in the mirror, the next day if he doesn't use his power wisely. So yeah, I mean that's at the heart of it. That the Dresden Files is all about power and the abuse of power. I don't know about my other books. I haven't really thought about them all that closely. Mostly, I just go, this would be really neat, and I get out my little army men and play and do their voices, and then I write it down.
We do have a microphone here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
Is it
there's a question back there. You can get the.
There we go.
It's on. There's the dude in the white
Right here.
thingy. There we go. I can't.
So,
Sorry.
each of you kind of mentioned that one of the things you enjoyed about this genre is being able to play and flip tropes on the head. I was wondering which tropes are kind of your favorite to play straight?
Well, when I'm writing westerns, I play by all the rules, but I do it in a very different way, so, if that's an answer.
And that's Chuck Norris, you're Chuck Norris, correct?
Ryu.
Okay.
Okay, see, I was voting Cobra Kai, but we.
All right.
This much.
All of the above.
I like white knights. There's almost always a white knight somewhere in my writing. I enjoy writing a character who they don't always get to be a white knight without a cost to them, without a cost for it, and they rarely get to ride off into the sunset and be heroic and thanked. But I like that character, that kind of character. So there's a lot of white knights in all my writings.
They go to Hawaii sometimes. They go to Hawaii sometimes with a hellhound.
Well, then they're tan nights after that.
Right.
I like to write women who have agency and kick ass.
Yeah, those are okay.
Good choice.
We have a question over here.
Yeah, sorry, and it's hard for me to see folks over there, so I
Hello.
apologize.
Hey.
Jim, I'm a big, huge fan of Mouse, and I recently saw a picture of the dog that he was based on, and I'm wondering, did you have a dog that large in your life prior to writing the character?
I have a dog who thinks he's that large. Mouse is the dog that my dog Frost thinks he is. Frost is a Bichon Frise who weighs but he is convinced that he is a warrior and can handle anything. And to be fair, he did save my kid from a bear when he was a puppy. He was attacked by a coyote here when he was 13 here a couple of years ago, and he broke a tooth off on the coyote and came out of that with wounds on his neck and a great deal of pride. and I can only assume that somewhere out there's a coyote with a tooth lodged in a bone somewhere that's going, man, that bunny was completely But yeah, when I'd forgotten how awesome it was to have a dog in the family until we got that dog. And then I remembered how cool it was. I'm like, okay, Dresden's getting a dog. That's how it's going to work. And so how am I going to do this? Well, I always wanted to write a book where he starts off running through a burning building carrying a box of puppies.
There you go.
And so we just started it right there. But that's where Mouse comes from.
This is for Jim Butcher, and I hate to ask, but my 14-year-old son, who's read all your books over the last year and a half, made me promise to ask if there was going to be another Dresden book coming out anytime soon.
Well, I gotta finish writing it. They won't do a publishing date until I've actually written the book. They're unreasonable like that.
One of my favorite parts about just kind of a fantasy noir setting is different types of monsters. What are your guys' favorite monsters and why?
Good question.
Oh.
Well, probably most of the monsters that I deal with are human beings. And,
We're the worst.
and who have sort of slipped a few cogs somewhere in the head or run out of sensible things to do. And, because even the most determined classical monster, compared to, say, Genghis Khan, is really small potatoes.
Spiders. I seem to get a lot of mileage out of spiders. Because those are something that people will. I mean, as far as monsters go, really there are things that are far scarier, like mosquitoes. But nobody shares pictures of mosquitoes and to a chorus of replies from their friends that just say over and over, nope, nope, nope. That would be a nope spider and no plans. No way. Yeah, so I get a lot of mileage out of that because that's something that's an irrational fear. We eat more spiders than they eat us. Yeah, they are.
That's the scariest thing you've ever said.
Yeah, well, there's a statistic I read somewhere where we eat about 1.3 spiders in our sleep every year without realizing it. Yeah, the 0.3 spider. Yeah. I ate a third of a spider last night.
There's a six-legged spider going, oh my god, this guy is dog.
As somebody
Limping
who
away.
shares a name with a famous spider, I take exception to this entire conversation.
Or some moderator.
I'm sorry. I see what you did there. Monsters, that's right.
I in service of the storm, I wanted to make a kind of new demon that harkened back to the original Lilith demons, with they were actually made of Adam's semen if you go back and read the old stuff. That was
No,
not
no.
the responsible.
No, that was a joke.
Okay.
But it's set in Savannah where my in-laws live, so they turned my father-in-law to a demon, and that was so satisfying.
Okay, read back. Okay.
This question is for Jim Butcher. First, I'd like to say I'm a huge fan. You and Stephen King were my inspiration to start writing. So, tremendous honor to be here. I love Dresden, but I also love Codex Alera. And I wanted to know if you had any intention of doing another Codex book, kind of like 100 years or so down the road, where they actually have to deal with the Karns, the Homeland issue, or if you're going to do something else in that world, or anything like that.
There's a couple of places I could go back. I don't have any plans to do it right now because I've got all these other stories in my head, and currently I'm going to have to live to be like 128 to get them all written, and which is cool. I'm happy to do that.
Take your vitamins.
But maybe one day it'll be possible. I need to pay off gambling debts or something, and I'll need to go back to Codex, desperately. But at the moment, I don't have any plans for it. There's a couple of spots I could go back. That would be fun.
Start
But
gambling.
I don't have any plans on the board right now.
Can we encourage you to create something?
Yes, you just did that by asking the question.
Over here in the black hole corner.
Yes, hi, my name is Jared, and I just wanted to say, one, thank you for being an inspiration for me. I actually got into the urban fantasy noir genre because of actually reading Stormfront. So thank you. But going with that, you all had mentioned levity and that kind of comic relief that goes with the darker aspect of these type of themes. And is there like a favorite either villain or anti-hero or even just comic relief that you just really enjoyed writing about?
Did I enjoy writing myself? I don't know. I like most of my villains, or I wouldn't do them that way. Some of them are a lot more fun than others. The ones that are just convinced that they're the ones that are the hero are the far better villains. And they're much more difficult to write.
Nicodemus.
Much more challenging to write. But those are the ones that really wind up doing the coolest stuff. Nicodemus Arcleone in the Dresden Files. Yeah, he works for the fallen angel and all, but he's convinced that he is the hero of the story, and the Dresden is just the newest annoying, dumb NPC to get in his way. So, but those are the villains that I always love the best. I really think Gaius Sextus from the Alera books was an enormously cool villain. Because really everything that went wrong in Alera was his fault, and if only because he just refused to surrender his power.
Sort of Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Except that instead of things falling on him, they fell on everyone else.
Right.
That's kind of the way it really works out in the real world when there's somebody like that. But But yeah, it's villains like that don't know they're villains.
I mean, everybody's the hero of their own story as far as they're concerned.
Well, and as far as all of us are concerned as well.
Yeah.
We're all living in a first-person novel. So, yeah.
Chelsea, Delilah, favorite characters?
Do they have to be villains or just be comic relief?
I think either is potentially an acceptable answer. Funny villains if you got them.
Like, I don't know if it's something, but like the sequel to Hit, I was trying to think of like, I want to write a guy who's not all evil, but who thinks he's good. And I was like trying to think of the best, most complex villain I know, and I was like, Boyd Crowder. Justified.
Nice.
So I was like, I'm just going to write Boyd Crowder.
Masterful villain.
Well, you know, for me, villains are the ones that are immune to a lot of human responses. And when you've got someone who is blocked off or has put their ambitions ahead of everything else, you end up with a first-class villain. And of course, I love them for being so icky.
So you're drawn to like the sociopath.
Well, not just sociopaths, but people who are, you know, to quote Shakespeare, vaulting ambition that o'erleaps itself.
Oh yeah, sure, just drop a little Shakespeare.
Yeah. Steal from the best.
Yeah. It's true, and God knows that's what Shakespeare did.
Yeah.
Hi there. So, quick question. In terms of scenery and setting, what lends itself very well to the noir in fantasy and science fiction? For example, what would make noir possible in Middle-earth, or where Eric is from Dune?
Cities.
Let me get away from cities, though. And what defines cities as being necessary for noir? Why can't you have it in the country town?
I mean, the Fremen are just super goth. So they're already wearing black. But I mean, you kind of need like alleys. Like, there's no alleys in Dune where horrible things can happen.
Yeah, noir in Middle Earth.
There's these hobbits. They're like rangers.
She walked in just past 11.
Ears up to here.
There were some strong noir elements in Peter Jackson's in the extended version of Lord of the Rings in Two Towers, where you actually get to see Boromir leading troops to victory over some orcs, and his father comes out and is all like, "That was wonderful," and then second string son, he's like, "Yeah," and then he gives, you know, and you can kind of see that Dad is, you can, I really hate they dropped this scene from the main movie, because you got to see the Steward of Gondor being, you know, kind of lordly and cool, and yet at the same time you could sort of see this ambition in the back of his eyes that was waiting to come out and undermine him, and sending Boromir off to find the ring, more or less, is essentially what he did. And yet at the same time, you also got to see the obvious yearning of his son, no way, and there's these evil forces that are out there, and yet you can see that they're undermining the very civilization that's defending against them as well, which is a very strong noir element. Also, I thought we saw some of it in The Hobbit, where we got to see Thranduil, how he conducted business at home, where kind of casually interrogating and then executing, you know, a prisoner. Granted, the prisoner was an orc and all, but Thranduil was kind of a piece of work. He really was. And close off the kingdom, screw the rest of the world. You know, we're going to be fine.
Well, there's grimdark, which kind of takes the medieval, or you know, the kind of fantasy setting and gives some darker twists too. But it does. I think if there was if somebody set out to have that tone with grimdark, you'd be closer.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we're going to see any or hear more about the Jade Court coming up.
Oh, Kyle, they're isolationists, and they're staying isolated. They're so isolationist that they're not even sure that this China idea is a good idea yet. They're pretty much still stuck in Chin and thinking that that's really the baseline. We might get them. They don't like to leave in the Yangtze River Valley. We might see one of their agents at some point. But yeah, no, the Jade Court, they're old school Chinese vampires. The rest of the world does not matter. China matters.
This is for Jim. To expound upon the mouse question, did you do research into the breed at all when you were looking up mouse and tendencies and stuff? Because of your novels, we went out and found one. And they're great breeds, and was wondering if you're going to expound more upon Harry's pocket upholding that he fit him in. Because not that's the whole list.
Well, bear in mind that Harry's 6'9" and had a custom-made coat. You know, so
I factored that in.
yeah,
Come out about that
when he was a
big.
baby puppy, when he was 7 weeks old. Yeah, my son actually came home with he came to Christmas dinner a couple years ago with a 20-pound, 8-week-old puppy. And adorable, so adorable. And now he's huge. He's half Great Pyrenees and half Husky, and his name is Atlas. And to be fair, he is the sweetest dog ever. And he is so gentle and kind with all the other dogs, but he's this enormous moose, and all the other dogs, like there's 2 Bichons in the family, you know. So my dog was completely offended by how Atlas grew up, and finally he realized that he could get on the couch and be eye to eye, stand on the couch and be eye to eye with Atlas, and growl at him. And Atlas has been taught that when he's in trouble, he has to sit. And so my dog would jump up on the couch and grrr, and Atlas would sit down like, I'm sorry. But yeah, he shakes his head, and there's drool everywhere, and he means well, but oh my goodness, the large dogs they have their own challenges. Yeah, they're quite big.
Ours is smaller. He only comes in at 155 right now, but he thinks he's a lap dog.
Good Lord, yeah. So is it a Tibetan or?
It's a Seattle.
Okay. Good Lord. Those are huge. You got the giant huge ones. Yeah, mine were also influenced by Ovarchka, the Caucasian mountain dog, which are an offshoot of the Tibetans.
That's ours.
Yeah. Did you have a problem with the aggression on him, or is he?
We haven't yet. We put a lot of work into socializing, talked to a breeder, read her book.
Oh gosh, this is a panel. I'm sorry. I got into a conversation. I apologize.
Okay, we all want one.
Okay.
I'll catch up with you later.
Okay.
I'll take Mister. That's fine.
No, I won't miss it.
Is there a point at which you think darkness needs to stop? Do you find anything off limits?
Not so far.
Everything is darkness. Yes.
Are you a goth kid on Southward?
That's right. Darkness. Errands. For me, yeah. I mean, there are some things that are too dark for me to go and enjoy writing about. Although some fairly horrible things have happened in the Dresden Files, I always try and leaven it. Not for you guys, just for myself. I don't mind torturing you. That's okay. But keep me going in it. I do sometimes. I kind of have lined up. There's a world of darkness, and we live in it. And kind of one of the things that I'm doing is writing away from that.
Delilah,
Thoughts
on the darkness?
Yeah, I mean, there's things you don't want to, when I'm writing, like, it's very obsessive, and I dwell there, and I don't want to dwell in horrible things that make me feel worse. I would rather dwell in the hopes. Even when it's bad, like a hard scene to write, it's the hope at the end that makes it, it's like trying to get your ice cream at the end of the broccoli, where you're like, okay, I'm gonna get there, and it's gonna be good.
Do you like to have happy endings for your characters, or is it just sort of come with whatever happens to them happens?
I like them to have happy endings, but like with realistic consequences for what happened. Like you don't escape the consequences of your poor mistakes or the PTSD from what you've done. But no, I mean, I definitely don't end on like, and they all die.
Happy endings. Well, if the characters are going that way, I'm happy to have them go that way. But if they're not, I've got to go where they go. They're the ones that are calling the shots.
Because you're just a contractor.
Yeah.
Right.
Someday you'll kick that football, Charlie Brown.
Or die.
Or die trying.
I mean, he's gonna die.
Hi again. So Jim started started this question in my head, but it probably applies to all of you for film noir, since you can only tell it from one perspective, keeping all of the different aspects of the world that you know solid and immutable. Jim, in your books, you reiterate in every book the core concepts and rules of magic and the character, and so we were kind of wondering why. Is that for you or for us to know this is how it works, this is how magic works, this is how the world is, or is it for you to not mess that up? And how do you keep that straight in your head as you write?
Are you asking for what is just to condense it for everyone?
I guess the solidarity of your rules in the world, so that whenever you're writing it, you don't trip it up and be like, oh, that character's not supposed to think that way.
What is the value of a magical system with rules?
Oh, one, it's the consistency. You want it to be consistent throughout the stories of whatever story world you're in, and you can have different rules when you go into different worlds, whatever. But when you're in that world, you need to keep your rules going and build that expectation for the reader. Unless you have an unreliable narrator, in which case then you get to pull the rug out from under him and your reader, and it's dangerous to do that because
readers don't like it.
They don't like it, and they're giving you their trust, and so you want to keep some things in. So I always know. I know what the concrete rules are in the Dresden Files world, the things that are immutable and can't be changed. Harry has a pretty good idea of what they are because, like, he's a professional wizard and all, so he kind of knows how the magic thing works. But he doesn't know all of it, and he doesn't understand everything about it. His understanding is imperfect. So there are going to be times where he goes, oh, okay, now I've just learned something new. But absolutely, you've got, once you make that compact with the reader, you've got to keep it. And I reiterate it book after book because largely there's going to be new people reading this book and they need to know what the rules are to get it. So I try and reiterate everything they're going to need to know for a given book.
Do you plan out a twist of those rules to trip us up?
A little. Not to trip you up, just to make you uncomfortable.
Magical systems?
Pat Rothfuss once said that when you're creating a magical system, always leave yourself an escape route. So, you have to tell people what they have to know, but you don't want to seal everything up watertight because sometimes you might need a loophole or an escape route.
Where's our guy with the mic? There he is. Okay, let's. Oh, you got it. Okay. Hi.
I'd like to know which book each of you have that you would most like to see as a feature film.
Does this need to be a book that they have written, or just a book that you've written that you most want to see as a feature film?
All of them.
A lot of car insurance.
I want Deadbeat as a feature film.
Yeah.
I want to see Harry and a zombie T-Rex.
Yeah. We all want to see that.
Zombie T-Rex would be fun.
I think the first answer is whichever one would make the most money. The action figures and, have little kids running over there in their costumes.
That's when you know you made it, the kids' costumes.
Well, I would say Wake of Vultures, because it's the next thing. I think you, as a writer, sometimes you fall in love often with the next thing that's going to happen, and so that's the one that I'm currently super excited about. And that would change in a couple of months, but there's a new one to get excited about. Because I don't have a zombie T-Rex.
Yes.
Find your zombie T-Rex. You writers that are out there, find your zombie T-Rex.
Before it finds you. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, do it.
Hey, so in other types of novels, especially if you were in a body horror panel the other night, it seems like a lot of times content comes to authors before the ending scene of the book, the ultimate purpose. But with noir, it seems like you would need to know sort of the end goal of the character or the way the mystery is going to end beforehand. So in terms of clues and leads, do you often think, ooh, this is an interesting thing for this character to find? Or do you often think, what does this character need to find to get them to the end goal?
Good question.
All of the above, yeah. It's one of those things, it depends on what you're trying to do and how the characters are developing and what kind of constraints are upon them. And you can't always call the shots.
Well, you can, but then you do a lot of rewriting.
I don't start writing until I know the end. It's almost like you have to figure out where you're going to go on vacation before you get in the car. But the route in between here and there, all sorts of things can happen.
That's a good example.
Yep.
I think of it as you're driving on a highway at night, and some things you know are going to come up ahead, because if I'm on this highway, then eventually I'm going to drive through St. Louis if I'm going this way. But you can only see as far as your headlights reach, and that's kind of where you're working is within the glow of your headlights.
Hi, I know in film noir there's always the classic double cross. I was wondering, for all of you up there, was there ever a character that you planned to go one direction, then all of a sudden they're in that situation and they just tell you no and they run off in a different direction?
Dirty double crossers.
The characters double cross us.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they double cross us, they just go where they're going. It's like trying to herd cats.
At times it is. At times it really is, where it's like I really had in mind that you were going to be going over this direction over here. You had a clue earlier, but instead we're doing a scene with your friend who is extremely important to you, and there's a plot over this way. We really need to get back to the plot. Fine. Somebody kicks down the door shooting. Have it your way. Whenever characters are getting too, that seems to wind up what happens with me a lot. Is I'll be like, okay, fine, and a Sasquatch kicks in the door.
As they do.
Yeah, as they do. But yeah, the characters will take off on you. So you've got to kind of have a balance of knowing when your subconscious is trying to tell you that you've got something really cool to write about over here, and understanding when you've got to look at your characters and say, all right, people, you guys work for me, and we've got a job to do, and we don't have much time to do it because the deadline is next week.
Right.
So that's always the balance, is you're always trying to balance your artistic impulse with your desire to eat.
The struggle is real.
Hi, the center of noir is often a mystery. What mysteries do you find most compelling, and how do you change them with supernatural elements?
You've stumped all of us.
Yes is not the answer for that, right?
Yeah. Yes. I'll accept yes.
There are always more esoteric mysteries, but the fundamental mystery of noir is who killed that guy.
Yeah.
And that's almost always what it is. I mean, you can get into some other ones, but really the core one is generally somebody's dead and why did it happen? You know, who did it and why? And finding out the motivations of people is kind of what is what the mystery is.
So then how does the supernatural factor into resolving that?
The vampires did it.
Yeah. It was vampires.
Yeah.
You might have some more primal motivations that a regular human being wouldn't have. Regular human being motivations for murder are relatively few. There's
And fairly simple, yes.
Yeah, fairly simple, and there's half a dozen or so. But normally one of them is not, I was hungry. So you've always got that extra one, when you've got the supernatural hanging around.
We have time for one more question.
What has been your favorite thing that, like, as you're writing, you just come and say, oh, this is a great idea, I need to include that, like a zombie dinosaur or something?
How does a zombie dinosaur come to you?
Well, that one I was watching a special on the History Channel all about Sue in the Field Museum in Chicago, and they were talking about having the actual bones. It was an entire hour-long show about that, and I'm like, that would be so cool because it's in Chicago and my book's in Chicago, and I could. Oh my God. I was like writing book 2 when I saw it, and I didn't get to write it until book 7, so I had to wait 5 years to do it. That's an awful lot of foreplay.
But it paid off.
By the time I got to write it, I was like, yes! Dinosaur! Plus, I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't know anybody who doesn't know at least one academic building that couldn't be improved by writing a zombie dinosaur through it.
Chelsea, Delilah?
how do you follow that?
Where'd your favorite thing come from that you're really proud of? When you were inspired to write the thing that was.
The very first episode of the X-Files I saw, they teased it, and it was the first season, they teased it as like, it's about chupacabras. And I was like, this is so cool, I'm gonna see the chupacabra, and I watched it. There was no chupacabra. And so I had to watch for like the next 9 years to make sure. There was never any chupacabras. I was like, I am putting legit chupacabras in this book. Legit chupacabras. One's named after Chuck Wendig. He named a strip bar after me. I had to do something.
Nice.
And I would go.
I think probably the one thing that really surprised me in terms of the critter that I didn't expect to be anything more than just sort of stage scenery was when I was working on Mortal Glamour, which is a standalone historical horror novel, and in it, I thought that there's a guy who's an inquisitor, and he's not nice. They're not supposed to be.
No.
But he took off in a really odd way, and I must admit I was really happy when he came to a sticky end because he was so. He was warped in a way I didn't think he was when I started to write about him.
So you guys really have to get in touch with your inner terrible people to
Oh,
channel
absolutely.
this.
It's not hard.
Yeah.
The chair moving. There you go.
Would you like to be a chupacabra in my description?
Well, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you all so much for coming in. Thank you all. And we probably have to clear the room quickly. So I don't know if there's time. Tech